Now we'll always be together. On the 6th of May 1939, the district court sentenced Bill Charles and Terry Blanchette to death. They will forever be remembered in American history as the bloodthirsty lovers. Heather was running late, but she still couldn't resist the urge to stop by the garage sale. The sale had a variety of cute little trinkets on display. As usual, most people were crowded around the stands displaying jewelry, paintings, and porcelain figurines. However, Heather's well-aimed gaze immediately landed on what appeared to be an unremarkable vintage photograph from the 30s or 40s. It was a photo of a happy couple on their wedding day, a perfect addition to her bridal boutique. "I'll give it to you for $2, said a woman, appearing out of nowhere and nervously glancing around. "Take it. I can tell you like it." Similar antiques were usually sold for 10 times more, so Heather enthusiastically held out her money. But instead of taking the money and handing over the photograph, the woman grabbed Heather's hand and stared at her with crazed eyes. "But remember, never, and I mean never, look at this photograph at night." After giving her warning, the saleswoman disappeared into the crowd. "Well, she's crazy," Heather grumbled, wiping her hand on her shirt. Either way, she had made the purchase and put the photograph into her bag. Heather then headed back to her car. The vintage piece was displayed in the most prestigious of places, the main hall of the bridal boutique. Glenn, Heather's fiancé, scratched his chin in exasperation and frowned. "Dear, you do realize that these people are probably long dead, right? The boutique is yours, so it's your decision. But that photo gives me the creeps." "Don't exaggerate." Heather walked up to Glenn and hugged him, looking at the black and white photograph. Suddenly, her face went pale. How had she not noticed the blood-red tear running down the bride's face before? No, that can't be. It was probably just a trick of the light. "Go home, Glenn. I still have a lot of work to do," she said. "You're staying late at work again?" "Things haven't been going so well here lately," responded Heather. "But once I can afford to hire someone, I promise I'll come home on time." A shadow of suspicion passed over Glenn's face. He shot another withering look at the photograph and headed for the exit. Heather didn't notice that it had gotten dark. At night, your imagination becomes your worst enemy. The silent, smooth-faced mannequins suddenly started watching your every step, and the white dresses resemble dismembered ghosts. Heather rubbed her temples tiredly. "That's enough. I need to get home now." She wrapped up her work and headed for the exit. As she walked down the main hall, Heather suddenly stopped in her tracks. The empty boutique was thick with a strange atmosphere. Something wasn't right. From the corner of her eye, Heather noticed that the photograph had changed slightly. Having forgotten the strange woman's warning, Heather approached the photograph and looked right at it. A chill ran down her spine. Her stomach clenched in fear. Heather could have sworn that the bride's blood-red tears had become larger, and that the flowers in the wedding bouquet had suddenly wilted. The groom's pleasant smile had transformed into an ugly smirk. Heather walked back to the door uncertainly. "That's it. I shouldn't stay at work so late anymore. My imagination is running wild." But there was another unpleasant surprise waiting for her at home. Glenn coldly pulled away from her kiss and demanded an explanation. "I don't understand. What explanation?" Heather looked at him in confusion. "Who is it? I walked past the boutique. It was closed, but I saw 2 people kissing inside. Now I know why you're always staying so late at work." They argued until morning. Heather tried to explain that no one had gone into the boutique at all that day, but Glenn only smiled sarcastically and didn't believe a word she said. Finally, he just left, slamming the door on his way out. Even with all that, Heather couldn't take a day off work. Once again, she spent the entire day at the boutique. but she didn't want to stay there after dark anymore. As darkness began to approach, Heather got ready to head home. Suddenly, the rows of dresses started to move. It was as if a strong wind was causing the dresses to sway back and forth and the hangers to rattle. The sudden movements scared Heather to death, but she had to go check what was happening. She walked past the old photograph and heard something drip. What the hell? Heather turned to look at the photograph and the blood drained from her face. A thick, scarlet liquid was running down the photograph and dripping on the floor. The groom's smirk had widened into a crazed grin. The bouquet had become completely rotten and was now covered in flies. And just when she thought it couldn't get any worse, the lights went out. Heather was standing in complete darkness. "This is just my imagination. I'm just overworked," she whispered with a trembling voice. Heather forced herself out of her stupor and reached for the switch to turn the lights back on. The dresses were motionless once again. The rumble of passing cars could be faintly heard from the street. She pulled herself together and headed for the exit, but on the way she glanced at the photograph. Her heart skipped a beat. The ground disappeared from under her feet. There were no longer any red stains under the photograph, but the newlyweds had also disappeared. The photograph was empty. The lights flickered, plunging Heather into darkness, then pulling her back out again. Suddenly, the faceless mannequins turned to face Heather, their movements jerky and awkward. They froze, hunched over in unnatural positions. A strong wind rushed through the dresses, revealing a woman's silhouette standing in amongst them. Terrified, Heather rushed for the exit, but the groom from the photograph was already there, obstructing her path. He began whistling the wedding march tune with his decaying lips and moved towards Heather. She could feel the rotting breath of his bride from behind her. "Till death do us apart," she whispered ominously. Heather screwed her eyes shut and rushed to the side. The heavy sofa flew through the window, loudly smashing through the glass. Heather jumped through the hole and ran out of the boutique. 15 minutes later, Heather was sitting outside her boutique while the police inspected the interior. But Heather wasn't surprised when the police told her that there weren't any signs of intruders. The surveillance cameras didn't reveal anything either. The footage showed Heather rushing around the empty boutique like a madwoman, trying to get away from her own shadow. But Heather knew there was someone who could explain all this to her. So as dawn approached, Heather headed for the house where the garage sale had been held. Except the person who opened the door wasn't the woman who sold her the photograph. "I bought a photo of 2 newlyweds here, and now they are following me around," Heather said immediately. "I didn't sell any photos." The woman slammed the door shut, and Heather fell into despair. Glenn didn't want to see her, her business was collapsing, and she was starting to go mad. Arriving back at the boutique, Heather saw someone, a woman in a shapeless coat, persistently knocking at the boutique door. Not knowing what to expect, Heather approached the mysterious visitor. "How can I help?" she asked, trying to sound calm and confident. "I can't believe it. You're still alive." Heather immediately recognized the stranger as the woman who sold her the photograph. She forced herself to remain calm. "How did you find me? I followed you that day. I had to know you wouldn't throw the photograph away, so that they won't come back to me, you see. I'm really very sorry, but I didn't have a choice." "You know who they are?" Heather interrupted the woman. "Pure evil," the woman whispered. She told Heather that the couple had lived in Chicago in the late 30s. Both of their families had been strongly against their marriage, but they found a way to be together. They gathered their relatives together for dinner and killed them all. They were soon caught and executed, but to this day their wedding photo travels around the country and torments anyone who happens to possess it. First, the newlyweds cause couples to break apart. Then, they kill them both. The only way to overcome their curse is to give the photograph to someone else. That's your only option. Sooner or later, They'll get you to look at them at night. That's how they get to everyone. If you want to live, you have to donate or sell that photograph, like I did," the woman concluded. Then she turned around and walked away. Heather's thoughts were in a whirlwind. She didn't want to put someone else's life in danger by giving them the photograph, but her desire to live was stronger. The door jingled to announce her first customers. Heather pulled on a fake smile and greeted the couple. Perfect candidates, thought Heather, and was immediately horrified at herself. No, she wouldn't be able to live with the guilt of risking someone else's life. There must be some other way. After saying goodbye to her customers, Heather decisively ripped the photograph off the wall and locked herself in the bathroom. The crumpled photograph fell into the sink. Heather flicked her lighter and set the photograph on fire. It burned and bubbled, emitting out screams of anguish and a thick, black liquid. Heather covered her ears and watched as the cursed photograph slowly turned into a pile of ashes. "How is that for 'till death do us apart?" said Heather after the fire had died down. Then the door jingled again. Heather fixed her hair in the mirror and headed to the main hall. She did it. She had solved the problem. Glenn brought a bouquet out from behind his back and walked into the boutique. Heather had stayed late again. She really should stop doing this, but first they should make up. There was a strong smell of smoke in the boutique, and everything was scattered around in a mess. The silence made chills run down Glenn's spine. Something happened here. Glenn shivered involuntarily as he walked down the hall. "That terrible picture," he muttered through clenched teeth, looking at the small bloody tear running down the bride's cheek. Heather still hadn't appeared, so Glenn got out his phone and called her. After a short pause, Glenn heard Heather's ringtone coming from somewhere close by. Glenn followed the sound with growing anxiety. He ended up at the clothes rack holding the wedding dresses. Suddenly, the ringtone broke off. Glenn parted the hangers and recoiled in fear when he saw Heather hanging from a noose fashioned from a wedding dress. "No, Heather!" He suddenly fell silent when he heard someone whistling the wedding march tune from the hall. "Till death do us apart," whispered a woman's voice. Nighttime visitors weren't usually a good sign, but Nina opened the door anyway and was shocked when she saw an unmarked box in front of her. Was it another wedding gift? But why was the sender anonymous? She brought the box into her apartment and opened it. The strong smell of rotting flowers wafted out. Inside was a vintage photograph in a beautiful frame. "What's that?" her husband asked sleepily. "I don't know. Maybe a wedding gift. I saw a similar photograph in the boutique, remember? The boutique where the owner and her fiancé were found dead? It must be some sort of prank. Throw it away," the man grumbled. "But I like it. I'm gonna put it in the bedroom." Nina placed the photograph on top of the bookshelf, turned off the lights, and climbed into bed. The faces of the couple in the picture were twisted, their skin covered in ugly scars. A dark, thick liquid started seeping out of the frame, forming a large puddle. Nina and her husband will awake to horror. If, of course, they are the photograph's next victim.